What kind of person smashes a carton of eggs in a crowded store and demands someone else pay for it? Karen HOA, that's who. The grocery store was alive with the hum of Saturday morning shoppers, carts rattling, kids whining, and the faint beep of scanners at the registers. Karen, a woman whose presence seemed to suck the air out of any room, stormed through the aisles of Sunny Mart, her oversized purse swinging like a wrecking ball. Her face, perpetually twisted in a scowl, broadcasted her entitlement to anyone who dared meet her gaze. She was on a mission, one she'd executed countless times before. Get what she wanted, pay for nothing, and leave chaos in her wake. Today, her target was a carton of organic, free-range eggs, $8.99, a price she deemed outrageous. She snatched the carton from the shelf, her fingers gripping it like a trophy, and headed for the checkout. But Karen had no intention of paying. She never did. The clerk, a lanky 19-year-old named Ethan, scanned her items with the kind of weary efficiency that comes from working retail too long. When the eggs beeped through, Karen's eyes narrowed. "I'm not paying for those," she snapped, her voice cutting through the store's ambient noise like a siren. Ethan blinked, unsure if he'd heard her right. "Ma'am, they're already scanned. It's $8.99. Karen's lips curled into a smirk, and she leaned forward, her bulk looming over the counter. "I'm allergic to eggs. You shouldn't even have these out where I can touch them. This store's a hazard." Ethan's brow furrowed. Allergic? She'd carried the carton all the way to the register. Before he could respond, Karen raised the carton and slammed it onto the counter. The crack of plastic and the wet splatter of yolks silenced the nearby shoppers. "Now look what you made me do," she bellowed, pointing a manicured finger at Ethan. "You're paying for this." Ethan's heart raced, but he held his ground. He'd dealt with difficult customers before, but Karen was a storm of her own making. Shoppers began to gather, drawn by the commotion. An elderly woman, Mrs. Carter, clutched her basket, her eyes wide with concern. A teenage girl, Mia, filming on her phone, whispered to her friend, "This is going viral." Karen reveled in the attention, her voice growing louder. "This store's negligence ruined my day. I could have died touching those eggs." Ethan, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, said, "Ma'am, you chose the eggs. You broke them. Store policy says you're responsible." Karen's face reddened, her eyes bulging. "Do you know who I am? I'll have your job for this." The standoff escalated as Karen's lies unraveled. Ethan, trained to handle such situations, called for the manager, Ms. Lopez, a no-nonsense woman who'd seen every trick in the book. Ms. Lopez arrived, her clipboard in hand, and listened as Karen spun her tale of an egg allergy so severe she could barely breathe near the carton. But Ms. Lopez wasn't buying it. "Ma'am, if you're allergic, why did you pick up the eggs?" she asked, her tone calm but piercing. Karen faltered, her story cracking like the eggs at her feet. "Two didn't know until I touched them," she stammered, but the crowd wasn't convinced. Mia, still filming, zoomed in on the mess, capturing Karen's flustered expression. Mrs. Carter piped up, her voice frail but firm. "I saw her grab those eggs on purpose. She wasn't sneezing or anything." The twist came unexpectedly. Mia, scrolling through her phone, gasped and held up a video she'd found online, a blurry clip from another store posted weeks ago, showing Karen pulling the same stunt, claiming an allergy, smashing a product, and demanding compensation. "She's done this before," Mia shouted, showing the video to Ms. Lopez. The crowd murmured, their sympathy for Karen evaporating. Karen's face drained of color, but she doubled down, shrieking, "That's not me! You're all lying." Ms. Lopez, now armed with evidence, crossed her arms. "Ma'am, you're not leaving until we sort this out, and you're paying for those eggs." The air in the store thickened with tension as Karen realized she was cornered. Her usual tactics, bluster, threats, and fake tears, weren't working. Ethan, emboldened by the crowd's support, stood taller. Ms. Lopez pulled out her phone, dialing the store's security team. Karen's eyes darted to the exit, but the crowd had formed a loose circle, their phones out, recording her every move. She was trapped, not just by the store's policy but by the truth catching up to her. For the first time, Karen's bravado wavered, and a flicker of fear crossed her face. She wasn't just facing a $8.99 bill, she was facing consequences. Karen's voice, once a weapon, began to crack under the weight of the crowd's stares. She clutched her purse, her knuckles white, as Ms. Lopez stood firm, her phone pressed to her ear. "Security's on their way," Ms. Lopez said, her voice steady, cutting through Karen's bluster like a knife. The store felt smaller now, the fluorescent lights harsher, as if they were spotlighting Karen's unraveling performance. Ethan, still behind the counter, watched the scene unfold, his initial fear giving way to a quiet resolve. He'd been screamed at before, blamed for things beyond his control, but this time, the truth was on his side. The crowd, now a jury of strangers, murmured among themselves, their phones capturing every second of Karen's meltdown. Mia, the teenager, held her phone high, the damning video still playing on a loop, showing Karen's identical tantrum in another store. "You can't fake this twice," Mia said, her voice dripping with teenage bravado. Karen's eyes flicked to the video, and for a moment her mask slipped. She wasn't just angry, she was scared, but fear only fueled her defiance. "That's not me," she screamed, her voice shrill enough to make Mrs. Carter flinch. "You're all conspiring against me. I'll sue this store for defamation." The threat landed flat. Ms. Lopez raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Ma'am, you broke store property. You claimed an allergy you can't prove. And now there's video evidence of you doing this before. You're not suing anyone." The crowd nodded, their murmurs growing bolder. Mrs. Carter, clutching her basket, stepped forward. "Young lady, you ought to be ashamed. These kids work hard, and you're making a mess for no reason." The confrontation reached a boiling point as security arrived. 2 guards, one a burly man named Tony, the other a wiry woman named Sam. They flanked Ms. Lopez, their presence a silent warning. Karen, cornered, tried to pivot. "Fine, I'll pay for the stupid eggs," she spat, reaching for her purse. But Ms. Lopez shook her head. "It's not just about the eggs anymore. You've caused a disturbance, and we're filing a report." Karen's face twisted in disbelief. "A report? For what? I'm the victim here." Tony stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, you're coming with us to the office. We need to document this." The crowd parted as Karen was escorted to the back of the store, her protests echoing down the aisles. Ethan exhaled, his shoulders slumping as the adrenaline faded. Mia, still filming, followed at a distance, whispering to her friend, "This is better than reality TV." In the manager's office, a cramped room cluttered with files and a flickering computer, Karen's bravado crumbled further. Ms. Lopez laid out the facts. The broken carton, the false allergy claim, the video evidence of prior scams. "You've been caught," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "You can pay for the eggs and leave quietly, or we can involve the police." Karen's eyes widened, her hands trembling. "Police? For eggs?" The twist deepened as Ms. Lopez pulled up the store's security footage on her computer. It showed Karen deliberately slamming the carton, her movements calculated, not accidental. "This isn't your first time," Ms. Lopez said, her voice cold. "We've had reports from other stores. You're part of a pattern." Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, she had no defense, no lie to spin. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in as the reality of her actions sank in. She'd played this game before, always slipping through the cracks, but this time the cracks were sealed. As Karen sat, silent and defeated, Ethan was called into the office. He stood awkwardly by the door, unsure why he was there. Ms. Lopez softened, her voice warm. "Ethan, you handled this well. You didn't let her intimidate you." Ethan blushed and used to praise. "I just followed policy," he mumbled. Ms. Lopez smiled. "That's exactly why you're getting a raise." Karen's head snapped up, her face a mix of shock and resentment. The idea that Ethan, a nobody clerk, was being rewarded while she faced consequences was a blow she couldn't stomach. She opened her mouth to protest, but Sam, the security guard, cut her off. "Ma'am, you're done talking." The weight of justice was settling in, and Karen's world was starting to crumble. Karen sat in the manager's office, her purse clutched like a lifeline, her face a mask of defiance barely holding together. The security footage looped on Ms. Lopez's computer, each replay of Karen smashing the eggs, tightening the noose around her lies. The room smelled of stale coffee and paper, the hum of the air conditioner the only sound as Karen's protests dwindled to silence. Ms. Lopez leaned back in her chair, her eyes steady. "You have two choices," she said. "Pay for the eggs, cover the cleanup, and sign an agreement not to return to this store. Or we call the police, and they handle it from here." Karen's jaw tightened, her mind racing for an escape, but the walls were closing in. The crowd outside, still buzzing with gossip, had dispersed, but Mia's video was already spreading online, racking up views and comments calling Karen out. The internet was merciless, and Karen's name was becoming a hashtag. The collapse came swiftly. Karen, realizing the police were no bluff, fumbled in her purse for her credit card. "Fine," she muttered, her voice barely audible. "I'll pay." But the cost was more than $8.99. Ms. Lopez slid a form across the desk, detailing the damages and a trespass notice barring Karen from Sunny Mart. "Sign it," she said. Karen's hand shook as she scrawled her name, each letter a surrender. Tony and Sam stood by, ensuring she complied. As she handed over the card, her eyes darted to Ethan, who lingered by the door. "This is your fault?" she hissed. But the venom was gone, replaced by desperation. Ethan didn't flinch. He'd faced worse than Karen in his 2 years at the store, but this victory felt different. It wasn't just about exit, it was about standing up to someone who thought they could bully their way through life. Ms. Lopez processed the payment, the beep of the card reader a final note in Karen's defeat. "You're free to go," she said, her tone neutral but firm. "But if you try this again, we won't be so lenient." Karen stood, her movements slow, as if the weight of her actions had finally settled on her shoulders. She avoided eye contact, her earlier arrogance replaced by a hollow resentment. As she walked out, escorted by Tony, the store felt lighter, the air less oppressive. Shoppers resumed their routines, but whispers followed Karen to the exit. Mia, still clutching her phone, uploaded the video with a caption, "Karen's egg scam gets cracked." Within hours, it had thousands of shares, each one a nail in the coffin of Karen's schemes. But the story didn't end with Karen's exit. Ethan, back at his register, felt a shift inside him. He'd always seen his job as a means to an end, a way to pay for college, but today had changed something. Mrs. Carter approached him, her eyes kind. "You did good, son," she said, patting his hand. "Don't let people like her make you feel small." Ethan smiled, a real smile, not the forced one he used for customers. Mia, passing by, gave him a nod. "You're a legend, dude," she said, her phone still in hand. The praise, small as it was, sparked something in Ethan. He wasn't just a clerk, was someone who could stand up, who could make a difference, even in a grocery store aisle. Ms. Lopez called Ethan into her office again at the end of his shift. "You're not just getting a raise," she said, her voice warm. "I'm recommending you for assistant manager training. You've got what it takes." Ethan's chest swelled, a mix of pride and disbelief. He'd never thought of himself as leadership material, but today had shown him otherwise. As he left the store that evening, the sunset casting long shadows across the parking lot, he felt taller, stronger. The world was full of Karens, people who pushed and demanded and lied to get their way, but it was also full of people like Ms. Lopez, Mrs. Carter, and even Mia, people who stood for what was right, who refused to let bullies win. Karen's story, meanwhile, became a cautionary tale. The viral video spread to local news, then national, with headlines like, "Egg allergy scam busted in grocery store showdown." Karen's name was linked to other complaints, other stores, other broken products. She faced not just humiliation but legal scrutiny, as stores banded together to share evidence of her scams. The law, slow but relentless, began to catch up. But for Ethan, The real victory wasn't in Karen's punishment, it was in the realization that he could face down chaos and come out stronger. The grocery store, once just a job, had become a place where he'd found his voice. And as he walked home, the weight of the day lifting with each step, he knew he'd carry that strength forward, no matter what came next.